Hey, economics students, I hope you're having a nice week. It was nice seeing a lot of you in our Google Meets this week. If you are not able to attend our Google Meet, the main thing I wanted to talk about in those Google Meets was how I am planning on assigning letter grades for the fourth 9 weeks. So I did post to our Google class a little bit of a video. I ended up not posting the actual recorded Google Meets. I figured I could kind of summarize it in a video a little bit quicker. So I posted a video with a document explaining how grades will work, and understand the policy that I have created is not set in stone. All right, it looks like there's a very specific way to get an A, a B, a C, a D, so on and so forth. I understand that this is a very extreme time, and I understand that not everybody has the same ability to access certain lessons and do certain things. So if you look at that grid and think, wow, man, this is awful. I don't think I'm going to be able to get a good grade in here. Please just contact me. I'll reach out to you if you're having issues as well here in these upcoming days so that nobody gets punished for this whole coronavirus mess. But I did want to just sort of throw out there and show you in general what I ideally would like you to have done in order to earn an A or a B in my class. So with all of that being said, I do want to take the beginning of this lesson to hopefully put some minds at ease and end some confusion. During our second period Google Meet, there was a request put out that I change up our Google Class interface. So I did that yesterday afternoon, and if you get alerts, if you have your Google Class set up to give you alerts, you probably got a whole bunch of alerts, and it makes it look like I just assigned a crap ton of work last night, which is probably not language a teacher should use. It looks like I probably assigned a lot of work. I did not assign any new work last night. So here is what happened. If you log into our Google Class, the top of it is still the same. These are just some sort of the reference materials you can use throughout our class, distance learning class. I still have all of the lessons posted just like before. That is not different. What I did last night is I added a different tab called the Assignments tab. Now, if you use my website, I already have this done on my Google website. I really like the website better than this, but I understand that Google Class is what most students use. So anyway, a lot of students ask that I just put the actual assignments, not the lessons, because each lesson has a Google Doc with multiple links. And so to try to make life easier, I tried to streamline it so that if you just want to go straight to an assignment, instead of going to the lesson to find the link to the assignment, I have each assignment linked directly from our Google Class right here. So you can go right into a Google Class. If you're missing the Google form about short money, you click right here, there's the link to it right there. The only issue is that when I did this last night, um, Google Class, again, it's very, I'm not a huge fan of the interface, but I keep saying that. I'll just stop saying it. You already know that. So the problem with Google Class is when I was doing this and rearranging the Google Class site, these popped up probably in some sort of an email message or maybe a text message to you as though I just added these assignments. These are not new assignments. These are the assignments I've already assigned. I just reorganized them to make them easier to find on Google Class. So these are not new assignments. If you are wondering what assignments you need to do, what assignments are done and which ones are not done, um, I updated Progress Book last night. So if you log into Progress Book, any assignment that is done has a number grade next to it. If there is no grade next to it, I'm not putting missing down because that gives you an automatic zero, and I don't necessarily want to do that. But if there is not a number next to your assignment, if it's just blank, that means that I do not have it. That means that it is not turned in. So look at Progress Book. Um, I'm trying to keep Progress Book updated within 48 hours of you turning things in. Uh, I've been doing pretty well at that for the most part. I know I've let a couple things slip through the cracks, but go on Progress Book. If there is not a number grade next to your assignment, that means I haven't received it. And if you're pretty sure you did it and turned it in, just shoot me an email. There's a chance that somewhere between the Edpuzzle website, the Google Form website, and Progress Book, something may have fallen through the cracks. So we'll double check that. But if there's not a number next to it, that means it's not done. All right. And then the last thing we're going to do before we jump into the lesson, um, I really did, or as of right now, from the first lesson of the week about sort of an overview of financial literacy, there was a little bit of a quiz slash questionnaire that I wanted students to do to kind of see where you are at in terms of your own financial literacy. And in general, the students who did this so far do understand the four broad categories pretty well. Income is money coming in, expenses is money going out, are anything that you own that have value, like a house or a car. Those are things that are assets. Those are things that have value. And liability is anything that you owe to someone else, which essentially means like debt. So if you owe the bank money because you have a car loan, that is a liability. If you owe a credit card company money because you have borrowed a lot of money to buy things with the credit card, that is a liability. Um, Compounding interest we'll talk about again later. And so yeah, what I kind of found interesting is that I asked on a scale of what Ivan called me out on this. In the original, I changed this morning because I said on a scale of 1 to 10, how financially prepared do you feel? And then the scale went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was awesome. But I asked you on a scale of 1 to 5, how prepared do you feel for life on your own financially? And most of you are at a 3. So you're kind of ready, but at the same token, there's a lot of things you have questions about. And in particular, I asked you if there was anything that you want to know more about and like good ways to stay out of debt. This was Ivan. Mr. Court, your scale of 1 to 10 only goes to 5. I'd like to know why that is. The reason that is because sometimes I make mistakes. So anyway, I found the results interesting. I'm looking forward to the rest of you letting me know where you are at personally with financial literacy. And with all of that being said, let's now move into the next lesson of financial literacy, which is income. And income is the one thing that it seems like most of you feel like you have a basic understanding of what income is. And that's what you feel the most financially literate about. Um, but it is important that we hit a couple main things, concepts about maximizing income. So simply put, income is the money that you get for providing some sort of an employer one of your factors or multiple factors of production. So again, when we talk about factors of production, we're talking about land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Typically speaking, for high school students and most Americans, we get income for providing our labor. That's the most common. All right, so when I'm saying factors of production, if in your mind, if you just want to think labor, that is okay, but there are other things you can provide to an employer. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that sometimes you can be your own employer. If you own your own business, you are providing your own factor of production to you. You can it's kind of an odd way to think about it, but it's important to think about it so that you know how much money you should be kind of taking in income to see if your business is really worth it and if you're really maximizing your opportunity cost. Um, Income is perhaps the most important aspect of being financially stable. Um, Obviously, if you have a large income, it's a lot easier to be financially stable. And it sounds very obvious. And unfortunately, some of financial literacy is obvious. There is no shortcut. There is no magical equation that's going to make you financially literate and make your life financially easy. It boils down to the basics of income and expenses and a little bit more with assets and liabilities, but income is important. However, that is not to say that if a person has a lot of income, that they are going to have an easy life. It's not to say that they are always going to make, really good decisions. A person with a lot of income who is financially illiterate, meaning they don't know how to manage their money, they can lose it quickly and they can experience a lot of financial stress. Whereas a person with a modest income who is financially literate can live a very meaningful and stress-free financial life. So like I think of a lot of professional athletes who early in their lives get a huge amount of income and we think, oh man, those guys have it made. Those 20-year-olds who are making millions of dollars to shoot a basket or to hit each other super hard with helmets, man, they have it made. What's interesting is that a lot of these athletes, once they retire, they are not financially literate. They don't make good decisions part of it is because of all the concussions they get, and that's I'm laughing, but it's not really a joke, so I shouldn't laugh. But they lose their money quickly, and there's so many stories of people who made millions of dollars as professional athletes ending up, becoming essentially destitute and living in poverty. Whereas I think of my in-laws with the second example, they neither of them went to college, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. That's definitely not a judgment call or anything of that nature. But neither of them, went to college. Neither my mother-in-law or father-in-law, they're not they didn't get doctorate degrees and stuff like that. But they found good, meaningful jobs. My father-in-law worked construction for a long time. My mother-in-law worked at the turnpike for a long time, and they were very financially literate. They didn't spend outside of their means. They had everything they needed. They lived very meaningful lives and still are living meaningful lives. And now at the end of their not the end of their lives. Oh my gosh, that sounded terrible. But here at the as they're entering retirement, they own a house or they own a house. They have a lot of assets. And it's interesting. It's not like they were ever making multi-million dollars, but just by being financially literate, they were able to live very meaningful and financially, and I don't say stress-free, but they're able to live meaningful lives and are now financially stable. Similar to most economic concepts that we have studied, it's important to find a balance. Just like there's a balance of supply and demand, there's a balance of additional marginal revenue and marginal utility. There's a balance in terms of finding income. You want to maximize your income without sacrificing your happiness and well-being. There's a balance between taking a job that you hate simply because it pays a lot of money, uh, and comparing that with the idea of living in poverty because you're only willing to do a job that you find brings you a super amount of joy and satisfaction. You want to find that balance. You want to find something that provides income, but it's not something that you're going to hate doing. It's ridiculous the idea of working for 30, 35 years at a job that you just hate, spending 35 of the best years of your life miserable just because you want to make a lot of money so that you can maybe retire and have 10 good years of retirement. It doesn't make sense. So in an ideal world, and it's usually possible to do. You can find an occupation that does both. And in a great world, you can find the occupation that brings you the maximum amount of joy and the maximum amount of money, and that's wonderful. But that's not always the case. The idea is to find something that you enjoy doing, that you can get paid a decent amount for, and that you don't just absolutely hate day in and day out. So how do you maximize income? All right. And this is where economic concepts come into play very well. Um, you will receive income usually based on the amount of value you bring to an employer. The more value you bring to an employer, the more revenue that employer will make. And so that employer is going to be willing to pay you the maximum amount that he or she can because you are bringing a large amount of value to that person's business. And that person might be you. You might be bringing your own labor, your own entrepreneurship to your own business. All right. In economics, we call that marginal revenue product. The added revenue an employer gets by hiring you is then redistributed back to you or distributed back to you, given to you as income. So, how do you add value? The key to maximizing your income is adding as much value to an employer as possible so that that employer again makes more revenue, can pay you more money. So how do you add value? What you do is you find something that you can provide to an employer better than anyone else can, or at least relatively better than anyone else. So if you are, you know, working for an employer or interviewing for a job, if there is something that you can provide, some sort of a service, some sort of labor, some sort of entrepreneurship that you can provide to an employer comparatively better than anyone else, the odds of you maximizing your income goes up. In economics, we call this having a comparative advantage. We talked about comparative advantage a long time ago when we were talking about countries trading. And as a reminder, comparative advantage is being able to produce something at a lower opportunity cost than someone else, which is different than an absolute advantage, which is being able to produce more of something than someone else. So what this means, and if you remember the example I used in class, I used the example of when Mr. Packard and I used to be school counselors. All right, and we would provide our service to the Ashland City School District as school counselors. And Mr. Packard had an absolute advantage in everything. He was very efficient, very good, very smart. And it came to two of the big things counselors do is they have to maintain spreadsheets and they have to write letters of recommendation. Now there's a lot more to it than that, but we're simplifying things for economics. If you remember, Mr. Packard could do both of those better than me. All right, he could make more spreadsheets than I could if he was making nothing but spreadsheets. He could make more letters of recommendation, write more letters of recommendation than I could when we were writing letters of recommendation. He had an absolute advantage. However, it helped us if I focused on one of those two and he focused on the other. And I focused on the thing that I had a comparative advantage in. I had a comparative advantage in doing spreadsheets. All right, every one spreadsheet I did cost me 2 letters of recommendation. Every one spreadsheet Mr. Packard did cost him 4 letters of recommendation. So he was able to maximize the amount of letters of recommendation being written. I was able to maximize the amount of spreadsheets that we were making, and working together, we worked more efficiently than we each did, our own thing. That's how comparative advantage works. It doesn't mean you have to be the best at what you're doing. You just have to be you have to be able to do a certain service or provide a certain amount of labor comparatively better than others. There's a little bit of a video we'll watch. It's sort of like I'm taking this concept with another theory about Martha Stewart. Should Martha Stewart iron her own shirts? Martha Stewart is probably the best, can probably iron better, faster than just about anyone on the planet. But does it make sense for her to iron her own shirts? She has an absolute advantage when it comes to ironing shirts. And so let's watch a little bit of a video. Again, this is the idea of comparative advantage. What should people focus on when they are using their factors of production?
Here's a picture of Martha Stewart ironing her shirt. Now, let's stipulate that Martha Stewart has an absolute advantage in ironing. She has an advantage in ironing just like the United States had an advantage in producing computers and shirts in the previous example. In other words, we'll stipulate that Martha Stewart can iron a shirt better and in less time than anyone else. So, if Martha Stewart has an absolute advantage in ironing, should Martha Stewart iron her own shirts? And of course the answer here is no. Why not? Well, every hour which Martha Stewart spends ironing her shirts is an hour she's not spending doing something else which is even more valuable, running her own business, for example, running her billion-dollar business. And in fact, in a famous statement, Martha Stewart, because she's very wise, she said, "I don't always do all of my own ironing, even though I wish that I could." Let's take a little bit more detail about why it doesn't make sense for Martha Stewart to iron her own shirts. The most important point to remember is that the important cost is opportunity cost. So what is the opportunity cost to Martha Stewart of spending an hour ironing her own shirts? Well, it could be thousands of dollars at least. Martha Stewart will be better off if she specializes in producing her television show and then she trades with someone else who has a lower opportunity cost of ironing. It doesn't make sense for Martha Stewart to iron her own shirts because the cost of her doing so is devoting her time to something where she's even more valuable, where she's even better, and that is producing her own television show. So Martha Stewart has a comparative advantage in running her business. Or to put it slightly differently, she has a comparative disadvantage in ironing. The cost to her of ironing is very high precisely because she is so much more productive at other tasks. So Martha Stewart wants to specialize in what she is most best at, in where she has a comparative advantage.
All right, so I like that. We're going to transition now into the second part of comparative advantage because, again, Martha Stewart, she has an absolute advantage in both running her business and in ironing her shirts. but she focuses on the one that she is more specialized in, where her comparative advantage is higher, which is in running her business. Because every hour she spends running a business, she is making thousands of dollars. Every hour she is spending ironing, it's saving her maybe, $20 because she could pay somebody $20 an hour to iron her shirts. All right. So again, you want to focus, you want to find that thing that you have a comparative advantage in, that you can do better than other people, and focus in on that. So an employer is going to be willing to pay more money based on your comparative advantage, on the thing that you are better at doing than others. If someone else is more efficient at providing a similar factor of production as you are not going to be in high demand. The employer is not going to be willing to pay you top dollar if somebody else is every bit as efficient as you at doing a particular performing a particular piece of labor or providing a particular type of entrepreneurship. So then this is where the practical application of this lesson comes into play. How do you increase your comparative advantage? I'm not probably telling you anything you don't already in some level understand. You want to get super good at something. If you're better at something than others, you're going to get paid more for doing it. So how do you do that? How do you increase your comparative advantage? You want to specialize in something. And when you are trying to figure out what to do, and this is the first step really to financial literacy, is understanding what you are going to be able to do to maximize income. What type of job, occupation should you be trying to specialize in? Where should you spend your time? How should you spend your time to learn to do a specific career? A lot of students, they put this too far down the road, the idea of what they want to do. All right. You need to sort of have an idea of some, and you don't need to know exactly what you want to do right now, but you need to have like a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. Have some ideas of what you want to do that you can specialize in so you can maximize your income. If you're instead just focused on getting a job to buy a car, you'll take any old job to buy a car. You're not setting yourself up to maximize your income long term, because you're just going to take any old job that any old person can take. And in the short run, you'll get some money. You'll work your tail off. And compared to your buddies, you'll probably make a lot of money in the short term. But while they're spending their time specializing, getting certain degrees or certain licenses or certain certificates, they're using their time now to become more specialized in a certain field. As things go further and further down the road, time-wise, they're going to surpass you because they're going to build their comparative advantage. They're going to build their specialization. So how do you do that? How do you build your specialization? How do you determine how to do this? First, and I can't emphasize this enough, do something, figure out what you are passionate about. What are things that you enjoy? You are going to be more likely to do well at things that you enjoy, do well at things you are passionate about, than if you just pick any old job because you want a paycheck. If you just go to work and you hate work, you dread work, you go 8 hours a day, you come home, when you come home, you don't think about work, you're never really going to get better at what you do. I mean, the experience will help you. You might rise through the ranks a little bit, but if you enjoy what you're doing, and if you are passionate about what you're doing, and that's not always a possibility to find a job in what you're passionate about, but if you at least enjoy what you're doing, you'll go to work, you'll try to improve, you'll try to get better. And that's why a lot of times we have you in schools take what are called interest inventories. You kids hate them because it's like 50 to 100 questions of, do you like this? Do you like that? Do you dislike this? Do you dislike that? Are you neutral on this? And at the end, it tells you things that you might be interested in. And you see, and I know I've done this for so long as a former counselor, most of you feel like, well, this is pointless, this is dumb. We do these all the time, but they are really important. If you can find something, a career that piques your interests, you're going to be much more likely to find an advantage, a comparative advantage in those. Do something, find out what you are naturally good at. Some of us have certain aptitudes. Some of us are really good at public speaking. Some of us are not. Some of us are really good at math. Some of us are not so good at math. Some of us are very analytical. Some of us can be very philosophical. Some of us are excellent writers. Find out what you are naturally good at and focus on that, because if you can take what you're naturally good at and get better, you will have a comparative advantage in that field, whatever it might be. I guarantee it. And again, that's why a lot of times in different, SSP lessons, we would do different skills assessments. A skills assessment and an interest inventory are similar. A skills assessment identifies the different skills that you are good at. And in general, ideally, after you take some interest inventories and skills assessments, you can find jobs that both you have the ability to do and jobs that you'd be interested in. And luckily, our high school guidance department has the ability to provide these types of tools to help you, to give you that solid career advice. So this is step one. Try to come up with a couple different things, a couple different occupations or careers that you feel that you could enjoy and that you would be good at, because then you can specialize in those careers. Once you have an idea for a possible occupation to really specialize in that field and to maximize the income you can make, I cannot emphasize enough how important education is, or some sort of a formal training in that particular field. Um, I'm not necessarily saying you have to go to the most expensive college to get the most expensive degree to maximize income. That's definitely not the case. But in general, you need to go out and get some sort of a degree in the field that you want to go into. There's all sorts of different types of college degrees, doctorate degrees, which are 8+ years of college education, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees. And it's really important to know the field that you're choosing, um, which type of degree to go for. If you want to become a teacher, you're going to need to at least get a bachelor's and then eventually a master's degree. If you want to become a nurse, you can make a very good living with a 2-year associate's degree, become what's called a registered nurse. It's very, very difficult work, but as you can see right now in the world today, it is very meaningful and important work. If you want to become a lawyer, you'll need to get a doctorate degree. So it's important to sort of understand the amount of training you'll need. There are also certificate programs available. I don't have it down here. If you're doing um, certain types of, if you're an accountant, there's different certificates that you can get for different types of accounting. If you don't feel like going to college, if it's just not for you, if higher education's not your thing, there are apprenticeship programs for electricians, for plumbers, for specific types of construction working, for HVAC, for all sorts of different skilled trades where you can earn an excellent living. If you are a very good electrician, a very good plumber, of very good at different types of construction, you can earn an excellent living. All right. And you cannot beat experience. As you get more experience in a certain field, you'll become better. Employers will see that you have more value to them. They will end up paying you more with experience. And you can get experience through internships. You can get experience through volunteer work. You can get experience. A lot of students are taking, well, I should say a lot of wealthy students nowadays in our society are taking what's called a gap year between their senior year and their freshman year of college, where they actually go out and they do like mission work, or they go out and they volunteer um, for different like internship experiences. They don't just sit around and play video games all day. And employers and colleges see that as adding value to yourself as a human being. So again, I mean, there's no magic bullet to this. That's the key to maximizing your income. Find out what you would be good at doing. Find out what you would enjoy doing, and then become good at doing it. And you will gain a comparative advantage. You will maximize your income. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. You can maximize your specialization in a certain field. You can maximize your comparative advantage, but don't forget the key concept when we learned about factor markets. The demand for your factors of production, meaning your labor, is derived from the product your factors are producing in the product market. So that means that you need to also understand the market reality of the career you are choosing. All right, so in other words, you could have a significant comparative advantage in a particular field, but so you could be the best at doing something, in other words, in a particular area. But if what you are making, if what your factors of production produce is not in high demand in the product market, your income will reflect that. This slide is a mess. So for an example, you could be a world champion burger flipper. You could flip burgers faster and better and more than any other burger flipper in the entire world. All right. And an employer would love you. The local Burger King manager would think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're the greatest thing since sliced beef. All right. You are flipping burgers, and he will pay you the top dollar that he is willing to pay his burger flipper. But at the end of the day, in the product market, people are only going to be so willing to pay so much for a Big Mac or for a Whopper. They're not going to, pay extra simply because you're an amazing burger flipper. So your income is going to be capped out based on the amount, based on whatever product it is that you are making. So you can be the best burger flipper and you can be the highest paid burger flipper in the history of burger flippers, but odds are you're not going to be making a ton of money because in the product market, there's only so much of a demand for, fast food burgers. On the other hand, if all that time you are taking learning how to flip burgers super duper well, if you take that time and instead invest it in culinary classes where you can learn how to make better burgers, where you can learn how to use different ingredients, where you can learn the science behind meat and the science behind um, culinary arts, then what you could do instead of becoming the world's best burger flipper, you could make the world's best hamburger. And that's a little bit different at that point. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's important that you understand the market you're going into and the product that your factory of production is producing. Do what you enjoy, do what you're good at, specialize, earn as much money as you can in that field, but also keep in mind, what is it that you're making and how much in demand is it going to be? So, with all that being said, um, oops. I do have a little bit of a sheet that I'm going to share with you for the assignment for today. The assignment is super easy today. I'm going to show it to you. It's almost embarrassing how easy it is. But I have a spreadsheet that I created a while back ago of the most common college majors or occupations and the average starting salary for each one of those. Again, this is the average starting salary. If you Google these and look some of these different things up, you would see numbers much higher than this. Usually when you see numbers with an occupation, it is the average salary, which assumes like 15 years of experience. So once you get an entry level position, and some of these occupations require different levels of education. But once you get an entry level position, this is what you can expect to make on average your first couple years in these particular jobs. All right. And so what I'm going to have you do is look at this list that I have created. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to close out of this Google slide and show you the assignment. Like I said, it's super easy. All right, so here it is for the assignment today. It's a very simple income questionnaire, and you might not have any idea what you want to do, and I get that, but do your best, figure out at least one thing that you feel like you might be interested in doing as you graduate, because we're going to use this dollar amount that we figure out today for our future lessons about how to plan for expenses, how to build assets, how to handle liabilities. So you'll just put your first name, last name, how confident are you in knowing what career you want to pursue. And here I have a link to that spreadsheet I was telling you about. It should work as soon as you click on it. You might need to be logged into a GoArrows account. And again, here are some of the most common college majors and most common careers that people will go into um, after high school. And it shows next to them how much you can expect to earn on average, your entry level salary. Um, and really, so what I'm asking that you do is sort of look this over. And down here, I just want you to type out which one of those careers or possible occupations are you the most interested in, and just type it in. And then down here, type in the dollar amount that you can expect to make. So I'm just simply asking you to find this and find that, or I should say find the career you're interested in, find the dollar amount you can earn, and then just enter them in these fields. The only reason that I actually have these open, if for some reason you cannot find what you know exactly what you want to do, and it's not in this list, then just type it in and you can kind of look it up on your own. Just sort of Google it. It's not that hard to Google up an occupation and find its starting average salary. So if you know exactly what you want to do, it's not on that list, type it in here, and then you're going to have to sort of find that salary on your own. Again, it's really not too hard to do that in today's day and age. Unfortunately, I was going to link into Naviance, unfortunately, and I get why. We are not going to be having, we're not going to be updating our Naviance license, so I don't think we have Naviance available anymore. So fortunately, I still had a lot of data from when I was using Naviance. All right, everyone. So that's really about it. Maximizing your income. It seems pretty straightforward, but at the end of the day, it's like one of the most important things about financial literacy is being able to maximize income. No, and you do that by going into a career path that interests you and that you have a natural ability in, specializing by getting training, whether that be college education, whether it be apprenticeships, whether it be internships, but by getting some sort of training for that job, and then by building experience. If you do that, you'll maximize your income. It doesn't necessarily mean you make millions, but in general, you would make enough to be able to live a meaningful life, um, and provide for yourself and your family. All right. Hope everyone's having a great week. Hope you have a really nice weekend, and we will be back at it pretty shortly. I will be seeing you in all of our Google Meets for the rest of this week. Bye.